This video is targeted at users who are using the grid component in desktop applications, and the video was made in response to a question from a user who has a form over here, and when he clicks on the form he's opening up a grid component in a window, and what he would like to do is read the value of this email address into an Xbasic variable, a global variable, so that the form can see the information. In other words, he wants to basically pass a value from a pop-up window that is showing a grid component back to the calling form. So you can see here I'm going to click this button over here, which is going to set a global variable called var1 and then if I were to go now to the interactive window and check the value of var1, you can see that we've set a global variable. So let's go and investigate how this is done. So clearly the first thing that you need to understand is that when you are displaying a grid component in a window in a desktop application, all of the interaction that takes place on the grid, since this is actually running in a browser, is actually JavaScript code. So let's go back to the grid component now and open up the grid component and go to fields over here and look at button 1, and if we go to the on-click event of button 1, you can see that the on-click event over here is just calling a JavaScript function called call Xbasic, and it's passing in the row number of the current row. So now let's go look at the JavaScript function definitions for the grid, and if we scroll down now, basically we'll see that here's our JavaScript. So there's my my JavaScript function called call Xbasic, and it passes in row number, and the first thing that we do is we call the built-in grid method called getValue, which is all of the methods are just available from this insert grid method. So now we've read the value from the current row in the business email field. We've read that into a JavaScript variable called email. So now we have this variable called email, and now you can see we've turned around and we've called another function called client-side Xbasic function, and we've passed in the value of email. So client-side Xbasic is a very powerful feature in version in Alpha 5. Basically, I think it's been around since version 9. But in any event, client-side Xbasic lets you write handlers for events in the browser, to write those handlers in Xbasic rather than JavaScript. Now obviously that's only going to work when you're running the browser in an ActiveX control on the desktop. It's not going to work in a web application because a web application doesn't have Xbasic available to it. But since we are running this grid application in a window on the desktop application, we can call into client-side Xbasic. So you can see we're calling a function called client-side Xbasic, and we're passing in this variable called email. So now we're going to go here to the client-side Xbasic function declarations and click on the builder. And if we just make this window a little bit smaller here, you can see the definition of client-side Xbasic. So here's my client-side Xbasic. We're passing in var name, which is the value of the email address from the current row, and we're just displaying it in a regular Alpha 5 message box, and then we're setting the global variable. So let's go ahead now and close this down, and then if we go into working preview and we run it, you can see there's the client-side Xbasic got called, and there's the value from that row, and there's the value from that row over here. So let's pause now.